Welcome back. I'm Gila Ross, author of Living Beautifully and host of the Power podcast, where we share short, relatable ideas to impact and upgrade your everyday life. Let's look at Chanukah and see about what it has to teach us. So I'm going to start with a different story, but something that we're going to learn a little bit about Chanukah from. So when what happened was that the Jews built the Mishkan, right, the tabernacle, the temporary tabernacle in the desert. And when it was inaugurated, the leaders of each of the tribes brought their offerings for each day, right? That was how it was inaugurated, except for the tribe of Aaron, right? The tribe of the Kohanim. They were going to be working in the Mishkan every single day. So every other tribe brought sacrifices for one day, except for Aaron. You have the story of each of the tribes bringing their sacrifices. And then immediately afterwards, the Torah talks about how Aaron is given the mitzvah of lighting the menorah in the Mishkan. And then later it would be in the temple as well. So Rashi asks a question. He says, why are these two stories put together? Right? There's no chronological order there. It wasn't that Aaron was given that mitzvah right afterwards. Like, why are they put together? So he says what happened is that Aaron was distressed. He saw that every single other tribe brought the sacrifices, and him and his tribe didn't bring the sacrifices. So he was kind of distressed. And as a consolation prize, God gave him the mitzvah of lighting the menorah. Any questions on that? Otherwise, I've got two for you. Why would Aaron be upset? If you think about it, all the other tribes get one day. He's going to do every single other day for the rest of the time of the Mishkan and the temple, right? Like, what is he upset about? That's question number one. And question number two is that, okay, fine, so he's upset about it. We don't understand yet why he's upset about it. But how does lighting the menorah help?
Prize or not. And it could be said that every day that he did it, it was a reminder of what he had lost, not what he had gained.
Okay, so you're saying it might possibly have made things worse. Okay, which makes our questions stronger.
I think lighting the menorah is like such a powerful metaphor, and the dailiness of it, you know, I mean, it's just not good enough to have light for 5 minutes on Saturday. You need it every day.
So I love what you're pinpointing. You're pinpointing on there's something about the menorah and there's also something about the dailiness, the day-to-day thing of lighting it that must have been an answer to what he kind of was distressed about. Okay, so let's try and understand what he was distressed about. Let's start with that. So first thing is that we have to understand is that he knew that he had a role to play, right? This wasn't a point of Aaron just feeling left out, right? There is an element of feeling left out, but it wasn't just that he felt left out, because he knew that he had a role to play. He knew that he was the one, he was the Kohen Gadol, he was the high priest, he was the one that was going to bring the Ketoret, right? The Ketoret is the highest sacrifice, the highest offering that anyone would bring to God. So that wasn't what his issue was. His issue was that he wanted to be part of the inauguration, because there's something powerful about being there, being at the beginning of a process, being at the beginning of something, right? You think about, let's say, for example, the birth of a child, the conception of a child. At conception, everything is there. And any slight imperfection at conception has lifelong consequences. And it's the same thing with anything, like, the blueprint of a building. Why do you need to make sure you have someone who is certified and knows what they're doing? Right? Why can't I draw a blueprint of a building? And you're laughing, and I'm okay with that. I couldn't do it, right? I could draw a nice picture of a house, and put the living room here and the dining room there. Like, why? What? You tell me. Why can't I just do it?
Because you haven't learned the technical ways that are important to do it the right way.
Right, and what happens if I make a mistake? It's going to be catastrophic, right? We're all laughing at me drawing it because I have no expertise at all. But even if you have someone who somewhat knows what they're doing, right? In some ways it's even worse because you trust them, and if there's a little bit of a mistake in the process in the beginning, it can have catastrophic results. And the same way on the other side, right? If you're there in the beginning and you know what you're doing, a good architect who knows how to draw it, they're there at the beginning and they are part of what helps this building be strong and sturdy and have a strong foundation and be lasting. So that's what Aaron said. Well, he wasn't upset that he was left out of it because he knew that he was going to be doing everything, but he was upset because he wanted to be part of that powerful beginning, that inauguration energy, right? There's this powerful energy in the beginning, and I think we see it as well in our own lives as well, right? When we start something new, how do we feel about it? Excited. There's an energy, right? There's an energy about starting something new, and he wanted to be part of the energy about in the inauguration. So that's what he was distressed about. Okay, so hopefully we understand the first part, answer to the first question. Now we have to understand what on earth is the menorah. Okay, so he turns around to God, so to speak, and says to God, "I want to be part of the inauguration process." And Hashem doesn't let him be part of it, right? Hashem doesn't change his mind and say, okay, you can also bring one. Instead, God gives him the menorah. Why? What's special about the menorah? And Beth Ann had a little clue there that she threw in.
Consistency. I mean,
Yes, beautiful. So there is two kind of lights. There's that beginning light, which is amazing and powerful and exciting and energetic, and it fades. And then there's the daily light of which is not as exciting, right? Because what God told Aaron is, he said to him, your descendants are going to be part of that Chanukah miracle. And it's not going to be as exciting, that they are going to be part of it, and that miracle is going to be even greater. Why? Yeah, because the temple, we don't have a temple nowadays. We will one day again have a temple, but right now we don't have a temple, and we've been without a temple for over 1,000 years. But the Chanukah one that we have comes up every single year. And we light it, and it has that consistency, and that this light, it's going to continue going until Mashiach comes. Let's try and understand this, right? So we're told when God created the world, he first created this incredible light and then because it was such an incredible light that it wasn't possible for us to live in this world with this incredible light. It was too bright for us. Hashem put it away, and we have the light, the sun, the moon, and the stars, right? That we light up the world nowadays, which are much less impressive than the other lights, but they're consistent. Right? And we have this pattern of these two kinds of lights, right? We have this initial light, which is incredible and exciting and energetic, and then it fades, it goes away. And then we have a smaller light that is what's the purpose of the first light? The first light is there. And let me bring this back to our lives for a second. Let's just say, for example, you start something new in your life. How does it feel that, the first time you start it? You start going to the gym, you start a new habit, you start journaling, you start lighting Shabbat candles, whatever it is. How does it feel the first time you do it? Exciting. What happens on day 7, for example? Whose idea was this anyway, right? Yes. And if we're still at it, right? But when does change actually start happening? 21 days, whatever it is, right?
It takes a while.
It's not on day 1 when it's exciting. And what's interesting is we all want to be in day 1. We all want to be in that exciting phase where it's like exciting and it's new and it's like, oh, I'm excited about it. But the real change doesn't actually happen until we get through that part where it's like, I don't like this anyway. And whose idea was this? And I've got like 300 excuses of why I shouldn't do it. And you do it anyway. That's when it starts to stick and it starts to become. And once it becomes a habit is when it starts becoming easier, right? If you've been doing it for 3 months, right? Lighting Shabbat candles, going to the gym, journaling. At that point, it just becomes part of what we do. Right? So there's these two parts of it, these two phases of it. There's that first phase, which is kind of like that first bright, exciting light. And the purpose of that, what is the purpose of that?
if you started in the middle part where it was kind of a slog, you'd never start.
Exactly. You'd never start. It's to get us started, right? But then it goes away. And it specifically goes away because it's great, that first part, but it's not real. It's not real. And also, really, it's a gift to us, because as Beth Ann said it so well, if we never had that first part, we would never get started, right? Who's going to start at the part where you're like, whose idea is this anyway? Right? You go because you're like, I've started already. I know I should go. I know it was exciting. I know there were benefits that I was getting from it. So you continue going. You can talk yourself into continue going. But if you never had that beginning part, then you would never start. So that beginning part is a gift that God gives us. And then God takes it away, because God kind of says that now do it, right? You got to put in the grind, the daily grind of going and doing it, and doing this new positive habit that you want to create in your life, so that it becomes part of you. And we see this pattern throughout life. I mean, the first time we actually kind of see this is when the Jews came out of Egypt. What happened is they had, talk about sparks, right? They had the 10 plagues, they had the splitting of the sea. It was incredible. And then after that, where does God lead them through? The desert. The desert is symbolic of like no hope, no growth, darkness, death, right? Nothing grows in the desert. And what do they have to do is they have to go through that 49 days until they get to Sinai. And what happens at Sinai is they come to Sinai and they receive the Torah, but they receive the Torah different than the people that witnessed the 10 plagues and the splitting of the sea. Because we're told that when they saw the splitting of the sea, they were on such a highly elevated spiritual level, but it was sort of like God lifted them up. Right? They came to Sinai and they came as independent people. It's kind of like if you've ever watched a child learn to walk. What happens is the child learns to walk holding on. And if you imagine you're in the child's mind, the child's holding on, thinking, yes, I'm walking, right? And then what happens what does the adult do in those situations when the child is holding on? You let go, and what happens to the child? They fall down, right? The baby falls down. And if you imagine you're in the baby's mind, the baby would be like, oh my goodness, like, how could you do that if you love me, right? And we know that the only reason why we let go is because we love them, right? Because if we held on forever and ever, this child will never learn to walk independently. It's the same pattern that God does for us, right? And we see the same thing, for example, in relationships, right? In the beginning of a relationship, there's all the sparks and romance. And what happens? With time, the relationship. New couples, it's cute, right? But an old couple that are together and have worked through their stuff together, it's no longer cute, it's special, right? It's a beautiful, special thing to see, because what they've done is they've taken this thing, which was, given to them, this gift of romance, and they've worked through their stuff together, and they've built a beautiful relationship together. It's the same thing of any time you've created, think about a habit that you've created, in a new habit, positive habit that you've created in your life. Everyone can think of. Can you see this pattern in it? And when you actually get to that point where it's part of your life, it becomes a part where you're like, wow, right? It's like that. This is beautiful and special, and sometimes we don't take that moment to actually recognize that this is what we've built in our life. I remember I was once talking to a student of mine in Manchester, and when I first met her husband was much more involved in Judaism than she was, and he was pushing for the family to become more Shabbat observant, and she was pushing back on that. Right, and I remember like the family went on an Israel trip together, and she had a moment where she was listening to one of the rabbis, and the rabbi said, don't just think about will my children be Jewish, but think about will your grandchildren be Jewish. And that moment really resonated for her, and it kind of helped her get on the same page with her husband about it. This happened before COVID, and then COVID happened, and everyone was home. And a few months afterwards, I was talking to her, and I was like, so how's Shabbat going for your family? And she looks at me and she's like, It's just what we do. And I was like, that is the most beautiful thing. That's how I was like, can you believe that you're saying that? Like a few years ago, you were like, this is not what I want in my life, right? Like she said, it's just what we do, and it's like my favorite day of the week.
Oh.
And like I said, can you just like believe that this is who you are now? I don't think we often like stop and because then it becomes part of who we do. But it's a beautiful thing to actually stop and think for a moment and say, wow, this is just who I am right now. Whereas if I wouldn't have put in all that effort, then I would be back there, who, you know, in the phase where either it's exciting and I'm going to do this, or it's like, you know, I'm not doing this. This is too hard, right?
More Shabbos observant has to kind of be like a menorah instead of a light bulb. You can't turn it on or off. If you were somebody who did not grow up that way, you have to take it in baby steps, because if you don't, you're losing things on Shabbat instead of gaining things on Shabbat. First you light candles, and then maybe you don't watch TV on Friday night, and then maybe you don't go to the mall on Saturday, or whatever it is. And as you add Shabbat into your life until it is total.
I'm so pleased you brought that up, because it's such a good point, yes. And the truth is, I think for most things, we have to do baby steps, because that's the way it becomes sustainable. But you're 100% right. You start with one thing and you add it in, and you add on another thing. Interestingly enough, we see that there's a male energy and a female energy in the world. And the male energy is that initial spark, and the female energy is that energy of consistency, right? Because if you think about the conception and the birth of a child, right? What is the male energy in the male part in birth of a child? It's that initial spark, right? Fun, exciting, amazing. Yeah, but it's very, very short-lived, right? What does the woman do? The woman takes that fetus and nurtures it, right? Day in, day out for 9 months, and then goes through the labor and the birth, and it's not exciting, and it's not fun, and it's hard work, and it's that daily grind. But that is the energy that takes this incredible, amazing potential and turns it into something that becomes real. Okay? Any questions, any thoughts before we continue?
Is there some secret to the consistency besides just pure grit and stubbornness?
So often what happens is that we get into, I'm going to call it phase 1 and phase 2, right? Phase 1 is that initial spark. Phase 2 is the daily grind. We get into phase 2 and we're kind of like, what's wrong with me? Why is this so hard? And to realize that there's nothing wrong with you. This is supposed to happen. It's supposed to be hard. It's supposed to, like, the excitement is supposed to go. And the reason why it's supposed to be that is because this is the time where I'm making it real, right? Yeah, it's exciting to go to the gym when it's, you know, January 1st, and it's exciting and whatever. It's exciting to write in your journal the first time when you got a brand new journal and it's pretty and everything else. But when you've let it sit for three days and you've missed 3 days, and to pick it up then, it's hard. And we so often think to ourselves, like, what's wrong with me, right? Why can't I keep up that inspiration and excitement? And first thing is when we kind of recognize that this is not that there's anything wrong with me, but this is the way it's supposed to be, right? The excitement is supposed to go, because this is the opportunity. This is when I get to build it into myself. And the only way I'm going to build it into myself is through fighting through those times when I'm not feeling particularly inspired, right? But I'm doing it. And it's that opportunity that makes us, that helps us learn how to put it into our life, right? For example, I'll use the example of lighting Shabbat candles, right? So you hear something, you're inspired, you want to light Shabbat candles every week. Great. The first week you buy candles and you light them, and it's exciting and it's beautiful, and maybe you even have that moment where after you light candles where it's just like, wow, it's so peaceful and serene, and I get to connect with myself, I get to connect with God, I get to connect with other people, whatever it is, right? Week number 2, you might forget to buy matches, right? Now, the act of forgetting, or maybe it's week number 3 or week number 4, whatever it is, right? You forget the candles, you forget the matches, or you forget, you're rushing around. Through those forgetting, you're going to learn something about it. about yourself. You're going to learn that, oh, maybe I need to start thinking about lighting Shabbat candles earlier in the week. Right? When I go grocery shopping, I need to put that into my habit. So it starts to become something that it's instead of just this exciting, inspiring moment, but it starts to become something that I learn, how am I going to incorporate this into my life in a day-to-day thing, right? Same thing, going to the gym, right? So let's say you go at the 6 o'clock class or 6:30 class, whatever time it is, right? So you wake up and January 1st and it's exciting. January 8th, you wake up and you're like, whatever, no way, I'm not doing it. And you don't go. And through that, you might learn, okay, I need a little bit more of a push. You know what I'm going to do is the night before, I'm going to put my gym clothes out and ready. So, and that's the other part that we have to shift from this mindset of like, I was successful or I failed to what can I learn? What can I learn from this? Okay, I didn't do what I was supposed to do or what I wanted to do. Okay, what can I learn of how I'm going to incorporate it into my life going forward?
And also knowing why you want to do something.
Beautiful.
Well, it's more than just saying going to the gym every day. So, you go to the gym every day at 6 o'clock, but maybe you didn't set an alarm and you woke up at 7:30. And now you've either missed your class or you say, oh, now I can't go to the gym because I've got this whole day of stuff. There's things that happen, like you don't have matches, that interrupt the situation. And you need to do a go-around. Are you going to just blow it off? Or are you going to say, I'm going to the gym anyway. I'll go for a shorter time, or I'll go this afternoon, or whatever. How important is it? You have to miss it. It's the same thing as lighting Shabbos candles. When you get into a habit of lighting Shabbos candles, and that's part of your life, if you can't light Shabbos candles for whatever reason, you miss it.
And I love what also you're saying, that we have to learn how to incorporate it into our life, which is going to mean that a lot of times we're going to have to do it when it's not plan A, right? So when it's not plan A, how do we do it? What is our plan B? And all those types of things is important work that it doesn't feel exciting and, energetic, but it's important work that we have to do in order to make it a part of who we are. So then suddenly, it becomes, right? Shabbat candles is on my grocery list, right? It just becomes part of who I am. I think about it on Wednesday when I go shopping to make sure that I've got all the things that I need for it. Yeah. Any other thoughts or comments that people want to add about how to get through
Every year when I was a real estate broker, I used to have a party with some of my clients, and I would tell them to choose a word to emulate their year. It's interesting if you take the time, and there's actually a book called One Word Will Change Your Life. You can look it up and read it in like a half hour. And you go inside and you think about what is your word for next year. Is it going to be peace? Is it going to be happiness? Is it going to be miracles? Is it going to be whatever it's going to be? And you'll find that it's life-changing. And I used to give the people who came to the party like a gift, like a mug that had the word on it, so that in the morning when they had their coffee, they would see to remind them of their word. And you'd be surprised at the end of the year how much the word you chose really did emulate your year. It set you up and you just knew. And if you told people what your word was, anytime something happened, I'd go, celebrate. Remember? Celebrate.
And I love what because you pointed out a couple of things there that are helpful because it's easy to set a word. I mean, I don't know if it's easy to set a word.
It's not easy to set a word.
It's one thing to set a word, but it's a second thing because you have the same thing here. You've got that moment where you have to choose a word, and then you've got the whole year. And you said a couple of things, like a mug where you can have a reminder of it every day, the accountability of telling someone else that word, right? So those are kind of things that you can add on to that initial thing so that you now have those daily reminders and the accountability of not just choosing that word, but following through on it every day.
There's a book called My Ear Saying Yes. She realized she was always saying no to everything, and she said, I'm just going to say yes to everything. Changed her life. For a year, she did that for a year. Things she didn't want to do, she said yes to. She just did them. And the experiences and I think that habitual thing of saying yes changed her life. It's a very good book.
It's interesting. There's a Jewish concept, I think, from my mom, who says that, because if you think about it, every character trait has like extremes, right? And for most of them, we're supposed to be in the middle, right? We're supposed to, it's not good to be impatient, and it's not good to always have patience, right? So we need to be, somewhere in the middle. Sometimes we've got to get going with things, right? The one that he says is anger. Stay away from anger. And he says sometimes when you're working on a character trait, you have to go all the way to the other side, right? So for example, if someone's initial reaction is to always say no, in order to achieve a balance of when to say yes and when to say no, sometimes you have to go all the way to the other side to then end up in the balance. And it sounds like that's what she did. Her initial reaction was to say no, and then she had to go all the way to the yes sides, and then I'm assuming she's now at a place where she knows when to say yes and when to say. So let's sort of sum up what we spoke about, right? We spoke about the idea that we started with the story of Aaron, who was distressed that he wasn't part of the inauguration because he wanted to be part of that exciting energy of the beginning phase. And God turns around to him and tells him, yes, I understand that you are distressed about not missing out of it. And I want you to know that what you're going to get is greater than being part of the inauguration. Why? Because you are going to be lighting the menorah, and your children, your descendants, are going to be the ones that bring about the Chanukah miracle, right? Because the descendants of Aaron were the ones who who fought the Greeks.
The Maccabees?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, they were the Maccabees who fought the Greeks, who cleaned up the temple, who found the oil, and he says, and as a result of that, the Chanukah candles are going to be there until the Messiah comes. We're going to light these every single night, and yeah, they're not the most, often they're not the most glittering, dramatic thing. And I don't know if you sometimes compare them to, especially I find in America, right? You compare them to the big Christmas trees. The Chanukah candle it's small, but it signifies something incredible, right? And it signifies the power of the consistency, right? The power of consistency, because that is where real change happens. It's not in that exciting phase one where it's exciting and it's energetic and we have to, and instead it's that daily grind. I'm going to call it the daily grind of consistency, which is what the Chanukah candles light. We light them every day for 8 days, each day adding on a little bit more, as Debbie kind of told us. And they show us, and every year we bring them out again and again. And that is what, and that's why it was a consolation for him, because he says, yes, you're going to miss out on that part, but you have to understand that the real power is in the phase two, is in the daily grind. And I think perhaps that's a message for us, is that we want to live, and we live in a world that wants to live in the phase one, right? That's where all the excitement is. It's all the excitement is in that beginning, right? January 1st, new year, new goals, etc. But let's talk about February 1st, right? Or February 15th, right? That's where the power is, right? The power is in being able to do it and falling off and getting back on, and falling off and getting back on. And that's what the Chanukah candles teach us, is that the light comes from the daily grind. It doesn't matter how small or how thin, but just putting in a little bit of effort every single day. When we miss, for example, we miss to kind of look at it and say, what can I learn, and get back on. And that's how we create real change in our life. Any thoughts, any comments? The story of Lavan and Yaakov, right? One of the problems, I'll share with you, one of the problems with phase one, right, is Lavan said to Yaakov, he said to him, fix your wage, right? Just tell me how much you want me to pay you and I'll pay you. And what happens is Yaakov would say, okay, I want you to pay me all the sheep that are born black this year. And Lavan would change his mind. Right? And then and they kept going through this cycle. Why? Because it's like a kid in a candy store. I don't know if you've ever taken a kid to a candy store. The kid, what happens, right?
They want the M&Ms, but then they want the
They can't
nerds,
decide.
and then they want the
They can't decide. And are they happy?
No.
Well, a lot of times they're excited, right? They're excited and they're looking around and this and this. What happens at some point is okay, maybe this is just me, but at some point my patience wears very thin, right? And it's like, okay, you got to decide. Oftentimes what happens is the kid will decide, and then they'll have a complete meltdown, right? They'll cry and whatever. Why? Because beforehand, the whole candy store was open to them, right? I can choose this, and I can choose this, I can choose that, I can choose that. Which, by the way, is potential. It's all potential for them. It's nothing real. They don't have anything in their hand. Now that you say to them, okay, you got 10, I'm counting, whatever, you got 10 seconds and then you have to choose. So they choose the M&Ms, right? And now they have the M&Ms in their hands, but they're looking around and they're like, oh my goodness, I can't have this and I can't have that and I can't have that and I can't have the other, right? And sometimes we can be like that as well, right? It's a commitment, right? And a lot of times, why do people, and men struggle with this more than women do, but why do people struggle with commitments? Is because if I say yes to this one thing, I'm saying no to the other thing. Now, how do we deal with that? Is to no to all the other things, right? And you're saying no to a lot more than to what you're saying yes to. But what we have to realize is that unless you actually say yes to one thing, you have nothing, right? Imagine you're on vacation. And it's your last day on vacation in Hawaii. And you're like, okay, I want to make the most of the day, right? So what am I going to do today to make the absolute most of it? And you could spend the whole day thinking about it. Should I go here? Should I go there? No, maybe I should go there. No, maybe I should go there. Maybe I should go there. And we're smiling and we're laughing because we know it's ridiculous. And yet sometimes we do this in life, right? Should I do this or should I do that or should I do the other? And we can't make a decision. We have to understand that until we actually make that, we have nothing, right? The person who has a commitment problem and can't commit to a relationship doesn't have anything. You can't build a relationship until you actually made a commitment to that thing. You can't go and enjoy your day until you've committed to it, even if it's not the very best choice, right? You're still going to end up with more than if you were to spend the rest of the time enjoying it. As a child, as children, you can't really explain this. You could try to explain it to a child, but they may not be able to hear it because all they can think about is all the things that they're not getting. But look, you have, right? But as adults, our job is to kind of look at that and say, yeah, it's true, right? Now I've chosen the ends, for example, right? I've chosen this one thing, but I actually have them, right? Yes, I've had to say no to every single other thing, right? I'll use the example of a relationship because I think it's so powerful there, right? Someone who says yes to someone else in a relationship. Yes, I've now have to say no to every other woman in the world. It's true. It is true. You have to say no to every other woman in the world. And you now have the opportunity to create a real relationship with someone, right? So that's the kind of thing that we have to recognize, is that decisions are hard because we're saying no to all the other things, but all that is potential, right? It isn't real. It only becomes real when we commit to the one thing, understand that we're saying no to all the other things, and now work on building this one thing. As adults, we have to understand that we can't have it all, right? We cannot have it all. We have to choose something. We have to choose something. And when we can't choose, instead of saying no to everything except the one thing, we're saying no to everything, really. So it looks like we know the potential's still open, but if go back to the last day in Hawaii, if you can't choose what to do, you're saying no to everything. Well, if you can choose, even if it's not the good thing, even if it's not the best thing, at least you have something. And I think we have to understand that potential is nothing until we actually choose something and make it into a reality, right? Yes, it's exciting to be, and I think that's the thing that's what maturity is recognizing that, yeah, I'm in the candy store, but actually nothing belongs to me until I choose one thing and say no to all the other things in the candy store.
Part of it is learning. You say no to every person you date or whatever. At some point, somebody comes into your life and you're willing to give it a chance.
Yeah, and that's maturity. That is, hopefully, maturity is that we learn from, you spend the day in Hawaii thinking about, oh, what can I do, and doing nothing. And then hopefully next time you're like, okay, you know what, I've got to make a choice, even if it's not going to be the best one. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen. I'd love to hear your feedback, and if you enjoyed this episode, you'll love my book, Living Beautifully, How to Bring Meaning, Joy, and Love into Your Life, based on the timeless wisdom of Pirkei Avot. And please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss out. Have a wonderful day.